Unit 8, section number 2, pages 128 and 129, space and time. This section is about Mesopotamia. Okay, so in this cover we can see two symbols. Okay, this is an image of the city of Harappa belonging to the Indus Valley civilizations, and this is a very typical sculpture belonging to Mesopotamian art. Okay, this section is going to have like two parts. Okay, the first one is talking about the geographical the setting of the territory of Mesopotamia, and the second one is going to talk about the different cultures. Okay, so this section, as you have in your book, is called Space and Time, and we are going to see the territory and the different chronologies of this section. It's kind of a difficult section because you have to remember the name of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different cultures living in the same period. So don't worry, because you will see that if you organize the contents slowly, you will see that it's not as difficult as you can think initially. Okay, so before everything, before reading from the book, I'm going to present here like a timeline. Okay, so that is very useful, and we are going to see, for example, different sections or different events happening during the Mesopotamian history. Okay, so here we have that 5,000 years BC. We have the construction of the Sumerians cities and the first development of the Sumerians in the Fertile Crescent during the Neolithic. Then the discovery of writing. Okay, so writing was invented during this period. Okay, and then we have the creation of the different states in Sumer. Okay, then we pass to the construction of the ziggurat of Ur. We can see it on the picture. The periods of Babylonians conquering Sumer, the Assyrians. Okay, so we pass through different periods and different cultures. Okay, but one by one, don't worry. So we start talking about the territory of Mesopotamia. I read from the book 2.1, the territory of Mesopotamia. The Mesopotamian civilization was located between the rivers Tigris at the north and Euphrates at the south. This is how the civilization received its name, which in Greek means the land between the rivers. The source of both rivers is in the mountainous region of Armenia, so eastern Turkey and today's Armenia, and they flow into the Persian Gulf. That is this water body here at the southeast of the valley. They flow in parallel, as you can see here, for a large part of their river course. Each spring, with the ice smelt, this river's volume increases and the waters overflow their banks and fertilize the land with their mud or silt. The meaning of this is that these large rivers were increasing the level of waters flooding their banks when the snows in the mountains melted, and they increased, they made the level of water higher than in other periods. So that's the reason why the area was so fertile. The territory of Mesopotamia is often divided into two large regions. Lower Mesopotamia, here this is the southeastern part, so the mouth of the rivers on the Persian Gulf, that is called Lower Mesopotamia and sometimes also known as Sumer, and Upper Mesopotamia, that it is called also Assyria. It is located in the south and was occupied by Sumer, okay, lower, and Akkadian civilizations, and the north was occupied by Assyria. Okay, so lower and upper Mesopotamia, and we are going to see now the four cultures which were forming part of the different territories. So in lower Mesopotamia, we have in green the city-states of Sumer, the Sumerian cities. In brown, we have Babylon, different areas. Okay, the areas of Babylon. In the middle, we have the cats. Okay, so that could be considered as the lower Mesopotamia, and in the upper Mesopotamia, we have Assyria. Okay, other thing that we have to know is that today the level of the sea is different from in the past. So we can see that the Persian Gulf was greater in the past than it is today. Today coastline is more or less this area. We can see the arrow is pointing. Okay, good. So we know the four different regions, and we are going to see the evolution from one place to another. I continue reading the historical evolution. The historical evolution started with the development of the Sumerian cultures and the conquest of the Persians in the 6th century. So it's about 3 millennia. It's about a period of history of 3,000 years. I read from the book. The fertile soil of the region attracted numerous people, and between 3500 BC and 539 BC, they disputed control over the region. As a result, the region's history is divided into periods defined by the people that controlled the region. In short, we can say that that was so attractive, so resourceful, so fertile, that many people of the area wanted to live here, wanted to conquer the territory. And we are going to find that during 3,000 years people were fighting to control the Mesopotamian region. We can divide this in two great periods. One, the period of the city-states, and two, the period of the empires. Okay? The period of the city-states was lasting from the 3500 BC to the 2300 BC, and it was dominated by the Sumerian culture. After the 300 BC, the city-states were dominated by different empires, and it's very easy to remember because they were moving northwesternwards. So first Akkadians, then Babylonians, and then Assyrians. Okay, so the first city-states. The Sumerians are considered to have begun Mesopotamian civilization. Around 3500 BC, these people, whose origin is unknown, established themselves in Lower Mesopotamia, which had until then been an almost uninhabited area of marshes. The Sumerians used dikes and walls to control the river's periodic rises, and they built irrigation canals, thereby extending the crop-growing areas with irrigation. The subsequent agricultural development gave rise to independent city-states such as Ur, Uruk, Lagash, Kish, or Eridu. Rivalries often developed between them. Each city-state consisted of a city and surrounding territories with an independent economy and political system. So, in short, this area in green here is the primitive or the first area that we know as Sumer. In your book we have that the origin of this area is unknown, but probably they have a connection with India, with the cultures of the Indus Valley, with whom they have many things in common. Each city here was completely independent. They have things in common, like for example the language, they have the religion, they have many things in common, but basically they were independent. The rise of the Sumerian city-states was about the 500 BC more or less. The remains of those cities are difficult to find today, but they are still existing in cities of Iraq or in areas of Iraq. Here you have like a reconstruction, like a drawing of a city, the city-state of Ur, and we can find here the ziggurat, that is a temple, the royal palace here, the port, the river Euphrates, okay, a canal of the river to bring the water inside the city, inside the walls. We can see here internal walls to separate the place where priests and kings were living from the rest of the people in the city. And now we are going to see how the city of Ur is existing today. So if you have in mind, you can go backwards. You can rewind this video to see the map, the diagram. So here is the ziggurat. This is a perspective from the northwest, and we can see the walls of the different buildings of the citizens, and part of the wall which was separating the ziggurats, the temples and the palaces from the rest of the city. So it's important to know that this first Sumerian civilization was a greatly developed civilization, constructing enormous cultures, enormous architectural buildings, and also great discoveries as the cuneiform writing. As these cities were fighting, they had many conflicts between them. At the end of the third millennium, so an area at the north of Sumer, which was Akkad, controlled the area of Sumer. The cities at the south, like here we can see Ur, or we can see Iraq, they were little by little controlled by a country, by a state, which was forming the first empire. So Akkad Empire or Akkadian Empire was inaugurating the second period of Mesopotamia, the period of the first empires you have on page 129. The Akkadians invaded the Sumerian cities, and in the era of Sargon I, this is the name of a king who was ruling Akkadian territories between the 2334 to the 2259 BC, more or less. The C that you can see on your book before the numbers, it is pronounced like circa. Circa. Circa is meaning approximately. It's coming from the Latin circa, and it is meaning more or less, because we are not sure about the exact chronologies. So Akkad, whose capital was a city that is not on that map, but it was called Akkad, is the name of a city that today is not known where it is located, but many students and scholars and researchers thought that Akkad was located in the area of today is Baghdad. Akkad was controlling firstly the area of Sumer, that here we can see in yellow, and then after several years, under the empire of a king or an emperor whose name was Sargon, and here you have a bronze sculpture of this king, controlled many territories of the Fertile Crescent, so the entire valley of the rivers Tigris and Euphrates, and areas of Turkey and Anatolian Peninsula and the Mediterranean coast. Okay. Here we have samples of art of the Akkadian culture. We have here that they also use a type of writing that is an evolution of Sumerian cuneiform writing, and they made different drawings or reliefs. Here we have a lion, we have a tree, warriors, we have a bull here, and this is a very tiny element that is a seal, un sello, that is cylindrical, and they put this on a piece of clay, and they made roll it, and they made a print with the drawings of the cylindrical seal. Then, after the Akkadian Empire, in the 2100 more or less BC, we have that the Akkadians arrived to a period of decline, and they were little by little conquered by a new nation appearing in between Sumer and Akkadian territory, that was the region of Babylon. The region was called as Babylonia, the territory, and the capital was the city of Babylon, that is in the banks of the river Euphrates. The Babylonians established themselves between the Sumerian and the Akkadian territories, as I said, and created a new empire which reached the height of its splendor during the reign of Hammurabi. This king unified the laws of the different cities and created the famous legal code that bear his name. So, Babylon, or Babylonia, that is the territory at times of Hammurabi, was conquering the territories of Akkad, okay, and they were forming a new society and a new culture. Here we have pictures of the reconstruction of Babylon today, and here you have the codes of Hammurabi, which we can see today in the British Museum, and it is a code of laws. Here we cannot see the symbols, but all that stone is a text of laws, so it's a legal code explaining that primitive system of laws. Okay, and we have the representation of the king Hammurabi, who is receiving the laws from a god. So remember, we have Sumeria, we have Akkadia, then we have Babylonia, okay, and then we have Assyria. So we're going to see that once the Babylonian Empire disappeared, about the 1500 BC more or less, we know that the Babylonian kingdom or empire was succeeded by the Assyrian. The Assyrians, which were governing during a very long period of time with different phases between the 1500 BC to the more or less the 600 BC, okay, we can see that they were a warlike people who came from the mountains, from the mountainous regions of northern Mesopotamia. The height of their domination of the region occurred during the reign of Eshurbanipal. They founded their capital city first in Ashur, here, okay, and then in the city of Nineveh, okay, a little bit to the north, okay. So they are today cities in Iraq with other names, but cities in Iraq. Assyria, we can see here the evolution of the Assyrian Empire with different phases. Okay, so this is more or less the origin of the Assyrian nation, or the Assyrian territories, then the conquests in the middle period, and then in the maximum period of splendor, including the conquest of Egyptian territories. They had an end, or their end was about the 6th 100 BC more or less. I'm going to show you a city that is Nineveh, okay, which was a very glorious city, the capital of the Assyrian Empire. And the city, this is a drawing, it was constructed at the north or northeast of the Tigris River, and we can see different districts of houses, and we see also a wall, and we see a citadel, or like an acropolis, so a city constructed in a mountain, on a hill, and they constructed a wall to defend this area from the rest of the city. We have also different towers and gates surrounded the city. I'm going to show you how the city was in the early 20th century in 1929. So we can see the river Tigris, okay, and we can see here the construction of that small hill inside the city, the layout of the wall, this other hill here at the south, more or less, and now the city today of Nineveh in 2015, that is in the today's Iraqi city of Mosul. So the area at this side of the river Tigris was respected, so they didn't construct anything, and we can see the remains of the walls. But at the south, we can see that the city was not respected. We can see the walls, farmlands, cities, modern roads and houses. And we will see a picture of today's state of the walls. Okay, so think that those walls had approximately 3,000 more or less years. Okay, we have here drawings or reliefs of the kings of Assyria. They were hunting lions and wildlife in this area. This is a very famous piece of art, and today we can see that also in the British Museum. After the end of this Assyrian Empire, we have the Second Babylonian Kingdom, also known as the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Neo-Babylonian Empire lasted about 1 century, from 625 BC to the 539 BC, more or less, and they had the capitality again in Babylon, and they were famous because they appear also in the Bible, and because they constructed this marvelous, that is the Istar Gate, that was a gate constructed on the wall, and today we can see it in Berlin, in Germany, not in Iraq. And also they constructed the famous Hanging Gardens, which were one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. This is an ideal representation of the Babylon Tower and the Hanging Gardens of the marvelous city of Babylon. But Babylon, Neo-Babylonian Empire, was conquering. They were very powerful, and they conquered southern Mesopotamia. They also conquered Assyria, Arabia, some areas of the Mediterranean coast. But they were confronting the Persian Empire, and the Persians were very powerful, and the Emperor Cyrus the Great conquered finally the Neo-Babylonian kingdom, and incorporating the territories of Mesopotamia once for all into the Persian Empire. Okay, so that could be complicated because we have many dates, names, places, and chronologies, but in short, we have to divide the history in 2 great periods. The first, city-states, okay, between the 3500 BC to the 2300 BC, okay, and the second period. The second period is the image you have now on the screen. Okay, so is the the second period is the period of the empires, the formation and the succession of different emperors and empires from one territory to another. Okay, and here we have a picture of each one of the kings to help you to remember. The first one was the Akkadian Empire, about the 2300 to the 2100 BC, more or less, okay, with the king Sargon. Second king or empire you have to remember is the Babylonian Empire, lasting 3 centuries, so from the 1800 BC to the 1500 BC, with the king Hammurabi, famous for writing a code of laws. After this, we have the Assyrian Empire, lasting about 9 centuries, 900 years, from the 1500 BC to the 625 BC, with different periods of expansion and crisis, and whose most famous king was Ashurbanipal, okay, famous for extending the territories and hunting lions. After the Assyrian Empire, We have the Neo-Babylonian Empire with the king Nebuchadnezzar, famous for the construction of the Hanging Gardens, and he was conquered by Cyrus from Persia, this area in green here, from the 539 BC to the 331 BC. In this period, they were conquered by Alexander the Great, okay, the king of the Macedonians up the north of Greece. Okay, with this conquest, we can talk about other things about Greeks and Macedonians from the Mediterranean. Okay, is the first time when territories from Mesopotamia were conquered by European or peoples from the European continent. So for you to help you to remember, you have to remember the name, the region, and approximately the chronology. Don't worry if you don't say 200 3000 BC, if you say 2300 BC, if you say it in other numbers, approximately it is okay. So actually I rounded the numbers here, except those two which were more accurate. Those numbers were more or less rounded, so don't worry about that. Okay, I don't want you to remember those things by heart. You only have to remember the total chronology, so from the 3500 BC to the 5500 BC. Okay, the location in Mesopotamia, Tigris, Euphrates, Upper and Lower Mesopotamia, and also the succession from Sumer, Akkadian, Babylonian, Assyrian Empire, Neo-Babylonian, Persian Empire, and that's all. Okay, so don't worry extremely about that. Okay, good. So the things you have to do basically is to watch this video to understand the concepts of the units, and then you have to copy a timeline. After this, you will watch another video about Hammurabi and Babylonia, and that's all. Okay, you will do some questions about that video that is only 6 minutes, and that would be helpful for you to understand the complete contents of this section that is extremely complicated. Okay.